Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. Dr. Carmen McGuinness here, coming to you on a beautiful spring. I hope it's spring. I hope it's early spring afternoon here in Central Florida, my YouTube studio. So I am a board-certified behavior analyst. On this channel, we discuss relationships of all sorts, including what I call the primary relationship, which is the relationship that we have with ourselves, which of course underlies all other relationships. So today we're going to talk about the fantasy bond in adult relationships with a little bit of history mixed in about how this might occur in childhood. So moving forward, the fantasy bond was first described by Robert Firestone, an attachment theorist and therapist. Two disclaimers here. Number one, Dr. Firestone's daughter, Lisa Firestone, is the premier expert on this topic. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to move forward and Google some things that she might have to say about this. So she is still very active in providing therapy and training other therapists, some of which I have received, about attachment theory and the fantasy bond. And she is an excellent source of information on this topic. So, disclaimer number two, fantasy bond, the term, is certainly very closely related to the concept of enmeshment, another term. And this is a well-established term in psychology as it relates to relationships and relationship therapy. So that's another concept that you might want to Google if you are interested in what you see here. And again, that word is enmeshment. So, moving on, the fantasy bond refers to an imagined or embellished bond between family members. So, sorry, just checking to make sure I'm recording, and I am. So this first appears in infancy, and the child with a less than ideal attachment with the parent imagines that all is well. Now, I just want to very briefly talk about what might be in a less than ideal relationship or attachment with the parent. This can come from various situations and scenarios. This is not necessarily the bad parent. This may very well be the distracted parent or the overbusy parent or the parent who is not necessarily in a good place themselves. So I'm not necessarily talking here about a parent who is intentionally not caring for the child. So, that said, backing up, this first appears in infancy with a child who has a less than ideal attachment with the parent and imagines that all is well. He might fantasize that he's being fed when he's hungry, or that she's being nurtured and cuddled when she's alone in her crib or her playpen. Some believe, many theorists believe, that this it's an early need to fantasize in order to feel safe that results in the creative people in adulthood, that this early propensity to fantasize actually creates the creative adult. And others believe that those who are more prone to fantasy, who have maybe a natural propensity toward this, who are the ones who engage in fantasy bond as infants. So, you know, you can look at this as a chicken or egg question. Which came first, the creative or the fantasy bond? So, something to ponder, maybe in another talk. So, at the very least, we know that a rich capacity for fantasy is well in place by the time it follows into childhood, by the time we get to mid-childhood, and as the older child is faced with existential concepts such as friendship. And later, children who embark on the fantasy bond tend to grow into adults who form fantasy bond relationships with their romantic partners and their adult friends, other existential terrain. So for the remainder of this segment, we'll be centered around helping you answer the question, am I engaged in a fantasy relationship? So here are 12 questions that you might ask yourself. Number 1, have you or your partner or friend stopped doing shared activities that you used to enjoy together? Sharing activities that you preferred, that were preferred by one or the other partner or friend, is an indication of the willingness to stretch one's boundaries in a normal and healthy way. If this has stopped, it might indicate that one of you was only performing for the other until the fantasy bond appeared secure enough to stop engaging in that activity that really the other person didn't prefer. This is number 2, do you or your partner or friend behave like a child in the relationship, letting the other make all the decisions, or like the parent perhaps, insisting on being the decision maker? This might indicate that one of you is reliving his relationship with his parent. So number 3, do you feel that your partner or friend puts you on a pedestal, or that he can do no wrong in your opinion? Embellishing your partner with virtues that he or she doesn't necessarily have is an indicator that you are in denial about your partner, living in a fantasy in which he or she is perfect. For instance, while Alice's husband was cheating on her, she was posting on Twitter and Facebook and other social media that she was the luckiest woman alive, even though she knew about his outside relationships. Conversely, the fantasy bond might lead to being, and this is number 4, might lead to being hypercritical of the partner or friend, placing childish expectations on him or her as a child might of their parent, the superhero. Number 5, is your relationship based on form or function? Are you over-focused on how your partnership or friendship looks to others rather than on your interpersonal, intimate relationships? Do you feel, this is number 6, sorry, I keep forgetting to add the numbers. Number 6, do you feel that you can't do things on your own, or that your partner can't? You might be afraid or reticent to travel alone, or to go out to a social event alone, or you might feel that your partner or friend is smothering you with his or her need for your company or care. This could be an indication of a failed sense of self outside of the partnership or friendship. In the fantasy bond relationship, partners have trouble differentiating their own identity. So number 7, have you noticed that you and your partner have less frequent and decreased duration of eye contact and physical touch? This might be a warning sign that you're avoiding encounters that might reveal the true underside, the true nature of your relationship. Number 8, do you have angry overreactions to feedback from your partner? This could reveal unreasonable expectations that his view of you is ideal. And number 9, in a romantic relationship, are you living separate lives together in the same home? This is a common pattern for long-term fantasy bond relationships. Number 10, do you find yourself lying to your partner in the way that a child might lie in order to avoid being in trouble? Or do you lie to your partner to protect him, or say that you're protecting him, like a parent might? In my own fantasy bond, my ex-husband lied about having paid our taxes, when in reality he was just trying to cover up for himself so that he wouldn't get in trouble. But he later said that he was just trying to protect me from the truth. A little bit about me there. So, number 11. Do you or your partner provoke angry encounters in which one of you says the very thing that the other might fear about himself, such as, you're lazy, or you don't care enough about yourself to lose a few pounds? And here's the last one, number 12. And this one is huge. Do you feel like you're living your partner's life? Like so much of what happens and has happened is really about them. And I'm not just talking about who gets the accolades, who gets the front line of attention. I'm talking here about their drama and their karma. Do you find yourself caught up in whatever is really about what they needed to do and what they need to experience, and really not at all about you? So there you go. There are 12 things to look for in case you fear you might be involved in a fantasy bond relationship. And that's what I have for you this week. I don't usually do an early sneak peek as to next week's topic, but I will because I don't want to leave you hanging here. So next week, I'll be discussing some strategies for bringing your relationship together, whether romantic or friendship, through the fantasy bond, bringing it through the fantasy bond and out the other side into true intimacy. I look forward to seeing you then, of course, and until then I have a very brief quote from the book I'm currently working on, Raising Your Inner Child. Here's my book plug. Raising Your Inner Child, which is releasing this May. And in it I say, it is an affliction of makers of fantasy to allow their boundaries to drop whilst others keep them up. This practice should be limited to fiction writing and talks with one's therapists. So I will see you next week for a segment on surviving embellishment in adult relationships, coming out the other side of the fantasy bond. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you then.